Hello there. My name is Biking Viking 11, and I'm a regular streamer on Twitch. But I have recently shared some of my Milwaukee Packout mods on a few groups, including here on YouTube. And I got a lot of questions about how I accomplished this build. I'm doing this video to hopefully shed a little bit of light on that as to why I built my setup the way I did, as well as some construction details. Let's get into it a bit. I am a USA Cycling certified race mechanic, as well as a Colorado League cycling coach. And I do support for our riders, as well as a few events in the area. And I have chosen the Milwaukee Packout as my toolbox of choice for doing this support. But as many people have realized, the Milwaukee Packout carts have a real weakness in that in order to access the contents of the bottom of the box, this requires you to unstack all of the boxes in order to open up the lid and access the contents of that bottom cart. So what I've done is modify my cart so that I can access the top with the drawer unit here. I can access all of the drawers here, but in the bottom, I have modified it so that it now has a drawer I can access. And as for why I need to do that, well, I think it's pretty obvious that this was kind of a weakness that was kind of built into the Milwaukee boxes. A lot of people have been asking about this mod, asking Milwaukee to manufacture something like this. And being a carpenter by trade, I decided that I was going to make this happen myself. So let's come over here to my table. I actually have two of these carts. You'll notice that the bottom one here is a cabinet, which is kind of part of an extended setup that I have for making coffee at the events. But right here on the table, I have my second box. And what I've done with this is I actually have all the internal components, which stiffen up the box in place. And you can see that they're not fastened together or anything like that. So before I ever took on cutting out the front of the box, and you can kind of see why I was hesitant right here. If I flex this by cutting out the front of the box, it really did introduce a lot of loss of structure. So I wanted to stiffen that up, and out of some pine material, it was actually a piece of pine tongue and groove flooring, nominally 1.5 inches. It actually ends up being about 1 3/8 inches in thickness, as you can see right here. I started shaping these pieces in order to fit into the inside of the box. And it was actually one of my viewers here on Twitch that suggested that I raise the drawer guides up above the wheel well section right here in order to get it to have a little bit more clearance. And I have the drawer that I made right here. And as you can see, I had to cut a little bit away from the back side of the drawer. The drawer measures about 16.5 inches by 11 3/4 on the outside by about 11 inches in height. And it's a nice size. It's actually bigger than the than the bin I used to use inside of here. So the way I see this, I've got a lot of criticism about, oh, you've taken a lot of room out of the box. But this is actually a little bit more room than was in the bin that I used to drop inside of here. I had to unstack my boxes, pull the bin out, set it aside, my stack, and then stack everything back up again so that I could work out of the boxes. But now that I have the drawer built into there, all I have to do is slide this out and can access the contents. So you can see that I've done a little bit of extra work to all of the components. As I was constructing this, I was getting a little bit of flack, for a lack of a better term, that this is adding a lot of weight to the Milwaukee Packout, which is a very light box. The cart is actually about 23 pounds or so, and by adding all these wooden components, it did add a little bit of weight, but through a combination of drilling all of these holes in all of the components, if I pull this out of the back here, you can see that I've done some work to the inside of all these components, drilled them all out. That saved about a half a pound. And on the drawer itself, I used a patterning bit. The drawer was built out of 1/2-inch Baltic birch plywood, which is very commonly used for drawers in commercial applications. I was able to save about 1.2 pounds off of the drawers. So if somebody was interested in building something like this and they weren't concerned about the weight, you could probably forego all of the drilling and everything. If you have lighter materials to work with or something like that, you could, just not worry about doing all the extra weight of pocketing it all out, and probably save yourself a whole lot of time. My process has been over a great deal of time because, as I'm sure a lot of people are concerned with their valuable Milwaukee Packout boxes, you don't want to just cut into them willy-nilly without having some sort of plan. So before I made any of these cuts, I made sure to look inside of the box. I took measurements inside of the wheel wells, kind of determined how wide the drawer could be. And as you saw on the drawer unit there, actually still had to shave a little bit off of there to make sure that it didn't interfere inside of this little wheel well. But each one of these pieces was shaped to fit the inside of the box. And I will caution anyone who's considering taking a project like this on that the inside of the Milwaukee box, because it is molded plastic, nothing is really that straight. The walls are not parallel, nothing's really square. They have to be able to remove the mold out of the inside of the box after it's molded. So the sides taper, and each one of these pieces had to be shaped fairly carefully to accommodate all of that. So the cut on the end of this piece is not fully square. It tapers in a little bit. I had to do a lot of hand shaping with a belt sander. You'll see that the bottom here was shaped so that this piece sits down on the wheel well. I was trying to pick up as much strength as I possibly could. And you can also see that there's a little bit of a shelf on the inside of the box. And so the thickness of these pieces was based upon that. You'll see that I placed screws very precisely. And again, this is all before cutting out the front of the box. Made up all these pieces where that screw goes down into a vertical piece right here. And once I determined how wide I wanted to make the drawer, I realized that I was cutting into a little bit boxed section. This is actually open from the bottom of the box. You'll notice a big channel inside of there that gives a lot of strength, vertical strength right here to the box. And I knew I was going to be cutting through that for the width of my drawer. So I added an internal component here, and this was kind of a trial and error process where I took a planer and had to taper this out again. You know, there was some sort of mandrel or something inserted up from the bottom of the box in the molding process, and I needed it to fit that, but I was able to kind of push that all the way up inside of there, match the taper through a trial and error process. And what it did is it gave me some vertical strength right here in the front of the box. So let me see if I can tilt this. You'll notice that I have some blocks embedded in the lid of the box. I just angled some screws inside of there, and I didn't really worry about finishing these out yet. But on the bottom of the box, you can see where I inserted the vertical supports and cut them short. I sealed these with sanding sealer first before I painted them to hopefully eliminate moisture affecting those pieces of wood. You may also notice that there is a T-nut embedded in this portion right here. And what that is for, sorry, everything kind of flops around when you don't have it fastened together. I actually have an adjustable foot that screws into that T-nut. So when I set up my boxes, they're actually resting on some adjustable feet that have some nice tough nylon inserts in there. Across the bottom, once I cut out the front for the drawer, I was concerned about the bottom having a little bit of flex. I often haul my carts over uneven ground, and I didn't want the uneven ground to bow up the bottom of the box. I used a 3/4 by 3/4 inch piece of aluminum tubing, and through the bottom I pop riveted it in a couple of places. On the other box, which is obviously a little bit more complete, I have some braces here, just some steel corner braces that are let into these pieces. And this one right here is not quite in the right position. I'd actually have to run the screws in there. But then I pop riveted these steel brackets into the vertical support here that's in this void, and then pop riveted it into the piece of 3/4 inch aluminum. And what that did is it gave me a lot more stiffness across the front. Combining that with screwing all of these components together, where I have a screw here that goes into the vertical support, and then another screw that screws into the horizontal support for the drawer guides. And the drawer guides are mounted like right in here. So I dropped all of my screws and I don't want to lose those. Then everything kind of got a lot more rigid again after cutting out the front of the box. Man, I thought about a tool list for this project, and it's quite extensive. I have some belt sanders. I have a 1-inch belt sander made by Makita that was used for smoothing a lot of the plastic. See, I ate a belt recently. I couldn't really explain to you how many tools that it would take for you to accomplish this project. I would just hope that you're skilled with shaping some wood to irregular surfaces, accommodating and shaving, and if you took your time, I'm sure you could accomplish a lot of this by hand, but the power tools really did save me quite a bit of time. And yeah, I wish you luck with it. This is nothing that I'm trying to do for commercial purposes. I shared all of this process with my viewers on Twitch TV, and actually a lot of the design details came from the feedback that I get from my viewers. They were asking me, well, why don't you do it this way? Why don't you do it that way? And quite often, the answers that I got were very useful, and I implemented them. The drawer guides I had originally planned on having those at the bottom of the case, and one of my viewers suggested running it above the wheel well, which allowed me to actually get a little bit more width. The thickness of the drawer guide is about 1/2 inch, and so just by coming up here, I had a straight shot at mounting a drawer guide, and then the 1/2 inch gap there, as I said, with just a little bit of shaving for the wheel well, allowed me to have as wide a drawer as possible. On the front side, I learned a few things, and I have kind of a whole drawer front assembly. The front panel right here is made out of 1/4 inch thick HDPE plastic, and I've drilled it through so that it accepts bolts through the front. I had originally attempted to do some plastic welding and to weld this onto the Milwaukee Packout plastic. What we learned through a trial and error process was that this HDPE, which is polyethylene plastic, is not compatible with the Packout plastic, which is polypropylene. But as you can see on this piece right here, that is the piece that was cut out of the front, I was able to actually weld some sections back together. I took some of the pieces that I cut out of here. All of this was done in the interest of just knocking weight off of the whole project, just getting rid of material that I didn't really need. And I took those pieces and welded them back together again, so that when I bolted this all together, there wasn't a void right here where the normal recess is in the Milwaukee Packout cart, where the tie-down loop is. And I, of course, removed the tie-down loop and filled it in with the aluminum bar right here. Underneath here, I have a piece of plywood that was cut to fit into the back of this drawer. And on this drawer, I actually made a little bit of a mistake. This was the first one that I cut out. And there is actually a ridge right here that was removed on this one. So when I put this one together, you can see that I actually exposed a little bit of plywood on the end. Well, on the drawer that my video showed, I actually left that in place and cut this just a little bit narrow so that it's all plastic along the side. So I will have to do a little bit of work on this one. The whole point of that was just kind of flatten the back side of it so that it fit up against my drawer front. You'll see that I have 4 holes drilled in here, and those are my mounting bolts that are drilled into the drawer from the inside. So that's how this drawer faceplate mounts on here. And then you'll see I have a bunch of embedded T-nuts that are set into that frame, and that's how my drawer front is fastened onto the front. Now there is a little bit of a weak point. These fingers right here, I didn't have any real way to attach them to and no way to bolt through the front. So what I did is, well, I taught myself plastic welding. As I said, once I realized that this was polypropylene plastic, then I was able to find a welding rod. And I was able to weld on a little piece of the same box right here. And these will be getting a screw that will screw into that HDPE plastic on the front. Had I to do this over again, I would have just left this piece of plastic here and not had to weld it back on. So if you're not into learning how to plastic weld, then that's what I would suggest. Okay, hopefully everybody followed that. Now, when I lay it out the front, again, this is gonna flop. As I said, my drawer was 16.5 inches wide, 15.5 inches wide on the inside. You can see that my cut is just over 16.5 inches. So I laid all that out on the front of the box, drew it on there with a Sharpie, and did the same thing across the bottom using a scribe to make sure that it was as even as possible. Spent a lot of time trying to get this all very parallel on the horizontal pieces there. As I was shaping them, I used a spreader to ensure that I was at my exact 16.5 inch width to try to keep those sides parallel so that the drawer functions properly and that the drawer guides work smoothly, and also to maintain the alignment with the piece that I cut out of the front so that the latches would still work. And all I can say is it was a very, very long, arduous process. As I said, I made some mistakes along the way, but the functionality is all there. As you can see, by paying attention, measuring twice, 3 times, 5 times before I ever made a cutout, I was able to inset that drawer into the bottom part. It works smoothly. The latches kind of rest there very naturally. And I left the top of it straight where there's a natural recess right here in the box to function as a handle. So I didn't really have anything sticking out beyond the front of the box. There's nothing really here that sticks out beyond the corner braces of the box that can catch on anything. And overall, I'm pretty happy with how everything came out. Okay, hopefully that clears things up for anybody. If you still have questions about this, what I would recommend doing is following me on Twitch TV and searching for Biking Viking 11. Thank you, and need my keyboard, and yeah, hope to see you on Twitch TV.